Hello everyone. So this is Adesh, and today we're going to see how to write your own Webpack configuration using Babel. So for your own JavaScript library. So you've seen like libraries like jQuery or Lodash or underscore. So we are going to create something like that, but in the process we are also going to learn how to set up our own environment and build configuration so that we can get a final bundle files which we can directly use in our script or in web page. So we won't have a lot of functions. We will be adding just a couple of functions. So main purpose of this video is to learn how to set the environment. So let's get started. So first of all, we'll be creating a project directory. So let's create one. Let's call it Webpack demo. So I'm using bash shell here. Here you can use bash if you have, otherwise you can just go to file manager and here and create your own folder and cd into it. So let's cd into it, and first thing we need to do is create a node project. So we're going to use npm init, and I'm going to use -y, just that it will add all the default values. Alright, so let's use VS Code. Feel free to use any of code editors of your choice, no issues with that. I just prefer VS Code, it's much better, and yeah, most popular too. Alright, so let's see what we have in our package.json. Alright, we got a couple of things. So first of all, what we are going to do is we are going to create a source directory. So we're going to create src. This src basically contains all our library source code. So for a start, we are going to create two files. Let's call it capital.js. So each of the file contains a function which will be exported. Let's call it add dom content.js. Alright, let's write the code for it. So we are using ES6 modules to import and export, and just like that, browsers, they don't understand ES6 modules or like that. So that's why we need to use a bundler like Webpack, which basically bundles all our code, like all our modules, and generates a single file which we can directly use in the web page. So a capital function, what it's going to do is it's going to take a string and it's going to return capitalized string. So get the substring, and I'm going to create it to uppercase, and then we are going to return the rest of the string as it is from. Alright, so we got our first function ready. Now let's export it. We are going to export it default. Alright, now write another function, utility. So basically we are creating a utility library. So add dom content is basically it will just create a paragraph and add it to the body. So we are going to keep functionality to the minimal so that we don't get into that, and we can focus on creating our configuration files first. So add dom content, it will also take some data, basically what the paragraph will contain, and then we're going to create a node, basically a paragraph element. So I'm using DOM API, and yeah, then we need to add a text of it. So you're going to say string. Alright, now we need to add it to the body. So we're going to say document.body.append child. So append child basically takes a DOM node and adds as a child to the body. So we are going to append our node which we created. Now similarly we will export this function. Alright, so we got our two utility functions ready. Now we need to create one more file, which is, so this basically will, so whatever is exported from this file will be the methods which will be available to our library. So basically we are going to import the capital function, since they are default exports, so we are not using any destructuring here. And likewise we are going to import the DOM content method. Now let's export. So whatever we export from this file will be the code that will be available to be used on our library. So we want to export the capital function here and the DOM content. So I'm using ES6. So all right, now we need to do one more thing. We need our dependencies. So we are going to, let's say we got the package.json and source. So we need to add dev dependencies. We're going to use Webpack, Webpack CLI. We need Babel core, we need Babel preset env, and we need Babel loader. So it's going to take a couple of minutes. So let me tell you what we did here. So Webpack is basically the bundler which we are using. So it's available as a node module on npm. Webpack CLI is basically used by Webpack. Babel, basically we need Babel to transpile our code to ES6 syntax. For Babel preset env, basically this is using the latest JavaScript, so that we don't have to add any polyfills for our ES6 plus code. And the Babel loader is basically a loader which uses Babel, and Webpack uses this Babel loader to transpile, to convert our ES6 code into ES5 before bundling it. Alright, so we got everything here. So let's create our Webpack configuration now. I'm going to call it webpack.config.js. Make sure it lives at the root of your project, not inside any child directories, because when the Webpack starts, it will look for this file. So we're going to use the inbuilt path module. All right. So let's say module.exports. We're going to export this. So Webpack, basically when Webpack runs, it looks to this file and sees this object. Like this is a configuration object for Webpack. So there are a couple of properties which we need to add here. So let's get to it one by one. First thing we need is the entry. So entry is basically entry point to our library or to our source code. So Webpack grabs this source code, and from here onwards it starts looking at all the code. So for example, Webpack will go here and see this file, and it will look at these imports and export, and it will start creating a dependency graph and resolve that to create our final bundle. Alright, so we need to give path of this, our entry file. So we're going to call it, so this is basically getting the path of current directory, and from there we want it to look for index.js file in the src directory. Alright, the next thing is, so when Webpack runs, it finally creates the output, right? The bundled file. So we can configure like what name we want to give it, where we want Webpack to put it, and other things. So let's add the file name. So we want to call our bundle index index underscore bundle.js. All right. Then we need to give paths like where we want it to create. So we wanted to create under build directory. So Webpack will look in the root, it will look for build directory. If it doesn't exist, it will create it. Now while writing a library, there are two more things. One is the library and the other one is library target. So let's see what they are. So library is basically how we are going to expose our code. So basically when somebody embeds our script or embeds our file, like our library, how they will have access to all our methods. So it's like we have on the dollar in jQuery, we have dollar where we can access, for example, different functions. Just like that, we are going to call our library dollar. So this is the variable where our functions will be accessible. So when we'll test it, we will know how this will be used. Now library target is basically the different environments we are targeting for our library. So we'll be using UMD. So basically it's universal module system. So basically it's supported by major platforms, be it client on the client side or on the server side in Node. All right, so we got this ready. Now Webpack by default understands only JSON or JavaScript files. It doesn't understand if there is a SVG file or there are any CSS files like that. So basically we have just JavaScript files, but we also want to support older browsers. For example, if you're using ES6 plus syntax or we are using ES6 modules and like that, we want it to convert to ES5. For example, if you're using in here, we are using ES6 syntax for objects. So older browsers won't understand it. So we want it to convert into something like that. An object, we have capital and this. So this is ES5 syntax. So we will be using, we want some rules to be set, like when Webpack comes across this index.js, how it's supposed to know it. So for that we will use Babel loader, which basically we installed, and we will create a configuration for Babel as well. So we need some rules which we'll be using for that. So there are a couple of rules which we need to add so that whenever Webpack comes across these things, it will know like how to handle these things. So let's write it. So inside module, we have a couple of rules for each separate files. So this is basically an array of different rules. So for us, we are just using Babel for our ES6 syntax. So we will have a single rule. So this contains three things at least. So we need to provide it a regex so that when Webpack comes across this, each of the files, it will use one of these rules to decide what to do. So we want Webpack to use Babel loader whenever it comes across any of the JavaScript files. So for that, what we can do is we can ask us to, we'll provide it a regex, which is basically a regular expression. You can just Google it and just read about it on MDN. Then we want Babel to use our Babel loader whenever it comes across these files. Now there is one caveat here. We don't want Webpack to transpile any of our code which is available in Node module. So or for example, we want Webpack to exclude some of the JavaScript. So for that, there is one more property available. We can tell Webpack that whenever you come across any of the JS files which are in this directory, just don't do anything with them. So this is basically regex as well. All right, so we got most of our basic minimal configuration ready. One more thing we need here. So Webpack basically works in two different modes. It's either in development mode or production mode. In development mode, it doesn't minify any of your code. but while using in production, we want to send the minimal code to the client. So in production mode, there can be other configurations, or by default it minifies all of your code. So I'm just using development mode here, and we'll hard code these values, but you can also set these values using node environment variables. For example, instead of development, you can just say process.env.node.env, and then set your environment so that Webpack can pick which one to use it from here. I think it's node.env. Yeah, got it. All right, so we got our Webpack configuration ready. Now we need one more thing here. Whenever Webpack comes across any of the JS files, it's going to use Babel loader. But Babel loader in itself is going to use Babel, which we installed. So we want to have a configuration for Babel as well. So let's create it. It's Babel RC. So this is basically configuration which will be used by Babel. So this is just a plain object with some properties into it. So for example, we install Babel preset env to use the latest JavaScript. Just like that, we can have different presets here, or if we are using any of the Babel plugins, you can have plugins or any other properties which are available. We don't need any plugins for now. We just need the presets and just one preset. So presets is basically an array of strings. All right, I think with this we got most of our things ready. Now in our package.json, we need to do two things. First, we need to add a main property to it. So main basically is the path to our code, basically what is we are building. So what is the final output of our code. So we want it to refer to inside the build directory. We will creating bundle.js. Then we need to have a script. So I'm going to remove test. We don't have any test for now. So we need to build our code. So let's write it. So what we want to do is we just want to use Webpack. All right. So with this, I think we got most of our things ready. So let's do one thing. Let's go here and run our build script and see what we get. All right. So it's running the Webpack. All right, so everything seems to be working fine. We didn't get any errors. So let's see what we got. All right, so we got the build directory generated for us, and in this build we have this our final bundled file. So it's not minified because we are using development mode. You can have a look when you create it. So all right, so finally we need to create one more thing. We need to test our library, like how it's going to work. So for that, let's create a simple HTML file. Don't create in the build, or if you want you can. So I'm just creating in the root so that I can give path. All right, so let's create a simple HTML. All right, so we need to provide path to our directory. So inside build, we will be giving path to our file. All right, so let's see what you got. So we're going to just console log. So like we said, our library is available in this browser on $. So let's see if we get anything. All right, so I'm using live dev server. So I'm just gonna open our index.html using that. All right, so let's see. Let's open our developer console using Control J. Or you can just go to here, and the more you can just Control Shift I using just you can open the developer tools. All right, so we got this module which is our library. You can see there are two functions available into it: add DOM content as well as capital. All right, so let's try one thing. Let's try to capitalize something. So we're gonna call capital. Okay, I'm gonna write login radius. Let's see what we get. All right, so you can see we got the capitalized. So I think our library is working totally fine. Congrats. All right, let's test one more thing. So we also created a function called add DOM content. So let's try to add some content on the web page. For now, it just looks empty. Okay, $.add DOM content. All right, this is a video by login radius. All right, let's save it and see. Okay, so we got a string on the web page. Let's see. So yeah, so inside a body we got our script here. This is our script we are using, and we got the paragraph on the web page. So congrats, we finally created a JavaScript library. You can also refer to a blog post written on Login ADS engineering blog, where if you prefer the written format, so this is also available. Yeah, thank you guys. Let me know anything if you face any issues in the comments. Thanks. Have a good day.